I'm so excited you're doing this. I would like to just let everybody know. I'll give you a little bit of an introduction, and we're gonna just have an hour, and I want to kind of keep this as Q&A as possible and open it up. For those of you who are here tonight, thank you all for joining. We have an incredibly special guest tonight, somebody who has produced over $6 billion worth of box office movies. By the way, I just made that up, Barry. Is that true?
No, it's not 6 billion, but I'm in the top 10 or something. It's like, that's all due to Mr. Adam Sandler. I have to, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, it's billions, let's just say. Okay.
Let's just say, I think having worked with Mr. Adam Sandler and Mr. Bernardi, I could say that a lot of the Adam Sandler machine is moved and driven by Mr. Bernardi. So we are incredibly blessed, and I'm really grateful to have you joining us tonight, Barry. You're not only one of the most prolific producers, you are really incredibly funny, and you're also one of the hardest working people I've ever met. So without further ado, let's have a round of applause for Mr. Barry Bernardi.
Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to spend some time with you. If you're all on the East Coast, it's late there. It's like 8 o'clock, right? So thank you.
It is 8:03 on the East Coast, but I think people are all over I think we're all over the place right now.
Okay.
Barry, what's the latest? What's the last movie that you produced that is that people may have seen that came out? I know the answer. I'm just feeding you the question.
Right. The last one we did together with Adam and Netflix is You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah, with Adam Sandler in it, with Dina Mendez, a great Broadway star. He had his kids in it. He had his wife in it. Louis. There's a lot of great people in it, and it's doing fantastically well on Netflix. And I'm very fortunate. I just want to say I'm very fortunate to be where I am today in Newport Beach. I'm very fortunate to be where I am in the movie business. I've been blessed, and I try to give back and pay it forward all the time with people I work with. And I think that my years of producing, I've always wanted to be a producer, always. I've never not wanted to be a producer. I never wanted to be a director, although I've second unit directed. I've never wanted to be an actor, but I'm in a couple of movies that I was forced to be in. Jeremy didn't force me on Murder Mystery 2. And by the way, Jeremy did an unbelievable job on Murder Mystery 2. It was a pleasure working.
Thank you. I'm good to go. That's all I wanted to hear.
He was a pleasure to work with. Also, animal in terms of working, never stop. Writing, directing, working with the team. Just a tremendous partner, and the outcome was a great movie, and everybody's proud of it. And so, thank you, Jeremy. And what you're doing with this academy is really, really terrific. I think that more people need to be involved in getting the next generations ready for the motion picture business. If there ever is one, if Screen Actors Guild ever settles, then we'll be back in making movies. So thanks again. I mean, I'll give you a little background about myself, I guess. So I started out as a production assistant, as most people do. And I worked my first movie with Tom McLean. You may know him as a great writer. He did Rancho Deluxe. He wrote Missouri Breaks. He's a terrific American, authentic writer, and he was in the movie business. I was fortunate enough to work with him in the beginning, and then I went to John Carpenter. I think everybody knows who John Carpenter is, and I worked on the original Halloween, and he cast me as a dead body in that movie. Which
Barry, what year was the original Halloween?
1978.
Hey, just a question to you guys. What year were your parents born?
I'm just kidding.
Yes. But
There you go.
I think everyone's, I mean, I think there was a Halloween that just came out recently. It's probably the 30th version of Halloween since you
Well,
started.
Rob Zombie had an attempt at it, and then Jamie Lee Curtis appeared in the latest ones with what's his name, Green, and so Austin Green. So it was a real privilege working with John. I did Halloween 2, 3. I did Christine. I did Starman. I did Big Trouble in Little China with him. He's a wonderful, wonderful man from Bowling Green, Kentucky, and he understands camera. He understands directing. He's a terrific human being, and he's a real gift to the motion picture business. After John, I stumbled into producing on my own with different outfits and becoming an independent producer. I joined the Directors Guild of America, became a unit production manager. Then I started location managing. And oh, by the way, my favorite movie of all time was Escape from New York, which I was the location manager on, but I was awarded associate producer because, you know, we had a great time. And
Wait, hold on a second. What is that? Can you explain to the to this group what that means? You got
so
you
so
were
what happened?
yeah,
What happened? Because there's really a few things that you need to do when you're working with people on a motion picture or movie or a short or TV, wherever you are working and you're producing a product, and you have creative people and crafts people around. You want to be a fun person to hang around, where people want to hang around with you. If you know, I always say skill maybe comes in number 3. Number 1 is luck, and number 2 is personality, and number 3 is skill. Because you could have all the skill in the world, but be a dead fish. No one wants to hang around with you. And also, you have to have a little bit of luck to be in the business, because unless you're a relative, and then you could automatically just assume the position. I mean, I think, you know, not being a relative, if you're just trying to join the motion picture business and don't have a history of it around people that you know, that's a real tough entry point. Also, I think that on Escape from New York, because we had so much fun, we were young. John Carpenter was young, and Kurt Russell was a hoot to work with all those folks. That I think I just got the credit as associate producer based on my performance, based on everybody having fun, and it was a fun way to reward someone. It's more difficult these days because that was an independent movie. Now you have people, you know, you have Netflix, you have studios that are owned by corporations. It's harder to achieve a producer credit unless you come in as a producer. It's rarely awarded later, right? So that was a real unicorn situation with John. After that, I got into the television business, and I made movies of the week back in the day. Made a bunch of them. In those days, you would produce a movie of the week in 4 weeks. You'd shoot it in 17 days, post it in 4 weeks, and it'd be on television. And you would do it for a license fee that the network would grant you, and you try not to go into deficit because you try to pay yourself. Then after TV, I joined Disney as a producer. I did I did Huckleberry Finn with Elijah Wood. Did Tom Sawyer with Brad Renfro, God rest his soul. And then I did a bunch of after Disney. I did my last movie with Disney called Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo with Rob Schneider, and that introduced me to Adam Sandler, who was producing that movie. And from then on, I was pretty much with Adam Sandler, and so it's been 25 years of an unbelievable relationship where his genius allows me to do what I need to do to facilitate and also run values on a movie, right? And what that means is when you have a showrunner like Jeremy or like Adam Sandler or anybody who has the creative pulse of the movie, whether they're the script writer, the director, or in television, they might be a showrunner, right? So what you want to do is allow that person or persons to be able to reach their goal by giving them all of their choices and working for the movie more than the studio. Okay, that would be my advice. Somebody told me once, the studio is the bank or the financier is the bank, but we're all the bank robbers, right? So our job is not to give any money back to the studio. Our job is to make the best version of the movie that we can for the showrunner, for the movie star, for the people that are involved. That's our mission as a producer, is to be able to put it all on the screen and not put it necessarily into foundational costs. You really want to spend the money on the screen so the movie, you're proud of the movie at the end of the day. So you surround yourself with people who want to do that. And so when I said before I wanted to be a producer, I could either be I wasn't going to be a writer, I wasn't going to be an actor, and I wasn't going to be a director necessarily. And I didn't want to go in the crafts. I didn't really want to be a grip or a script supervisor or an electrician or a property master or a production designer. I wanted to be management. I really wanted to help the creative people make their movies. So that's the choices you have to make. If you want to be in management, if you're creative and you want to be a director or a writer or an actor, then focus on one of those things. If you want to be a producer, there are several types of producers. There's a producer like myself, which helps facilitate movies and works directly with the creative people on the set and the studio. There's also producers who find scripts from agencies, and they are producers that can sometimes take 2 or 3 years to get a project made. For instance, on Murder Mystery, the producers, James Stern and Trip Vincent, took 3 or 4 years before they could get Murder Mystery 1 produced. And it just took them a lot of iterations, a lot of different studios, and they finally got it made, which resulted in such a success that we were able to do Murder Mystery 2 with Jeremy. So you have to make that decision, because producer is like an umbrella title. You can be a producer as a creative producer, you can be a line producer, you can be a head of production for a company and facilitate and run the values of the movie with the creative people. So you could be an associate producer and be a development producer. So you could be a development person at a company, and if you find a project or shepherd a project through, you'll get an associate producer or co-producer title, and that's an entree into the business as well. It really depends on what your goals are in the business. If you're interested in post-production, that's another way to be an associate producer. Or if you're a first assistant director and you really click with the director or the producers because of how you handled yourself on the set, then you could also, that's a nice pathway to being a producer as well. I think the crafts are also creative and producer type positions. Editor can be a producer, a first assistant director can be a producer, a director of photography can be a producer, and strangely enough, a transportation coordinator could be a producer, because they understand production and they understand teamwork, they understand how people work together, and location managers, where I came from, can also be producers, because you're handling administration and you're handling the look of the movie. So there's a lot of different pathways to being a producer from crafts positions, and they're actually empirical examples of it. This guy named James Brubaker, who was a famous transportation coordinator for Brian Grazer and Ron Howard, became head of production for Universal Studios. And he came from transportation. Myself, Sam Mercer, a bunch of other folks became producers from being a location manager. First ADs are natural producers because they really have a head around them. They work next to the director. They're the hardest working person on the set. And they understand all the moving parts. So I think the main thing when you do become a producer is to treat everybody fairly, to be kind to everybody, and to listen to everybody and what they have to say in terms of how their approach to making the movie better. So that on Murder Mystery, Jeremy was serviced by all his, his court was there ready to work for him, because we cast the right team behind the camera, right? Just like you cast a movie, you have to cast your right team behind the camera. So because you're spending 12-hour days, you're spending an enormous amount of weeks, could be on location where you're away from your families. And so you want to be able to trust people and make sure that the director's protected, the actors are protected, and everybody feels comfortable, so all they can concentrate on making the movie, right? So that's the environment that a producer wants to set that table, right? Before you, even when you're in prep, because prep can be the most fun rather than the shoot. If you're really prepared for a movie, the prep is the most fun because you're manufacturing the plans to make the movie, right? When you shoot the movie, it should be automatic. You've secured the design of the movie, you have the actors, you have the script, you have the ability to change lines on a day. You have all of the costumes have been settled, the looks have been settled, and so at that point you're basically translating everything that everybody's been talking about, like architectural plans, and you're actually building the building when you're shooting. So the prep is really, really fun when you're meeting and talking about stuff. Plus you eat a lot of food, that's also a good thing. And you eat a lot of food during production too, I have to say.
Barry, one of the things as you're talking about this, it's really interesting for me to hear you say it and speak with such kind of ease in terms of how you handle yourself as a producer. Like when sometimes when I talk about writing or I make the assumption that kind of anybody can do, like it's an easy thing to do, anyone can do it. But one of the things I wanted to, I'll point out to you, but I'll also point out to everybody on this Zoom. There are all the producers and the types of producers that Barry mentioned. Sure, they're all called producers. But what Barry was able to pull off for in our experience on Murder Mystery 2 was for me, it was the definition of what a producer is, because you can't really, it's hard to really point to, Barry's not a production designer, he's not a writer, he's not a director, he's not an actor. So it's hard to say, like, when people are like, what does a producer do? The producer is the person who makes sure that everything is working and make sure that, we're going to shoot at the top of the Empire, at the top of the Eiffel Tower. They're going to let us shoot it, for the first time. How are they going to do that? I don't know. Barry, the producer, is going to make that happen. How are we going to shut down this road next to the Seine River? I don't know. We're going to make that happen. How are we going to visualize this stunt? We're going to get 15 different stunt coordinators. We're gonna make it happen. Oh, wait a second, COVID is happening. How are we gonna shoot at this day when we can't get an actor out of New Zealand? And Jennifer Aniston only wants to shoot on this place. And how do you do all those things? The producer,
you make sure you're loaded up on Chinese food.
Yeah. But
also what you're saying,
an incredible job. I mean, it's an incredible job. The one note I have, Barry, is next time we do a movie, together. We shouldn't do it. We shouldn't shoot in two locations that are exactly 12 hours apart from each other.
I thought that was elegant, actually. I think, thank you for that, but really, I rely on a team, right? Just like you do, Jeremy, and like, to get onto the top of the Eiffel Tower, it really requires a lot of moving people, it takes a village, right? You've heard that before. You got to be involved with people who can get the job done for you. I can't do it. One person can't do it. So, you approach problems as solvable. You never want to hear no. That's the first thing for being a producer. The word no is not in your vocabulary. You always just want to get everything that you can to make the greatest movie that's ever been produced or directed or written. That's your goal. Anything short of that, and you drink heavily on a Friday night. I think that basically you've got to surround yourself, like what Jeremy was saying, with a great production designer, if there's action sequences, you want a great second unit director, a great stunt coordinator. And when I said you need to take care of the crew, that means, and Jeremy mentioned COVID, then you have to have, if you're going to have action or you're going to have any danger to any person on the crew or talent, you need to make sure you have safety people in place. You have, rehearsals. You spend the money on all that stuff. You never short circuit that kind of stuff. And same thing for COVID. You have all the medical tests. You have all of the assets at your disposal, which Netflix, by the way, provided to make sure everybody was safe. And there was protocols if anybody got COVID. And we were actually shut down at the beginning of shooting in Hawaii for 3 days because an actor got COVID. So we kind of sat on our hands and we had to rearrange the schedule. But you think on your feet, you just go and do. What if there's rain, or what if there's snow and it calls for a sunny day? Those are the kinds of things you have to be able to adopt to, right, as you're making the movie. But you're way ahead of the curve. It really takes a lot of common sense, what Jeremy was talking about. You say, okay, well, how do we get this? Well, fine. You just start working with people who can make it happen. Never panic, and always just, it takes a lot of dialing. If you guys ever remember what a rotary phone was like, it took a lot of dialing back in the day with rotary phones. Now with cell phones, it's just like speed dial. And then the great thing is when your battery dies, or when you're in a place where there's no reception, and then we're all reduced to the rotary phone. So
Barry, have you said no to Adam much?
I try not to. I mean, sometimes there's a reality where an actor's not available, or how about we shoot here, and we go, we can do that, but it's less. We could put more money on the screen if we go to a rebate state like New York, where you go up to upstate New York and get 30% on your money. Now your money's going much farther to put on the screen. So, but if the script
now it's 40%, FYI.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So that's compelling, right? That 40% is a compelling number. And I think, unless the script calls for where you have to go to the, like Apocalypto with, which is, despite the director, it's one of the greatest movies ever made. They went into a jungle that you had to be there. You couldn't fake that on a back lot at a studio. You had to go where that story was taking place, and whether there was a rebate or not. So sometimes the movie calls for something where you got to go where there's no rebate. And one of the great things about being in the business is the ability to dress however you want, and you're not in an office every day, and you get to each new movie is a new experience with new people. I could not personally work in an office every day. It would just, I just can't do it. So, But for me, so it was a perfect match for me because it's creative. You meet different people, you go to different places. I mean, with Jeremy, we were all over the Caribbean scouting. We went to Hawaii. We went to Paris. We went all over to make sure that it was the right place to shoot. And on Hustle, the movie we made a little before Murder Mystery 2, the basketball movie with Sandler, we were in Majorca, Spain. We were in Philadelphia. On Murder Mystery 1, we were in Monaco. We were in Italy. We were in, we were in everywhere. We were in Montreal. So it really gives you a great benefit of meeting different people. And there are a lot of on-set romances when you do that, when you're young. Not that I have any. I have an in-house romance with my wife.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Barry, can you elaborate on your on-set romance? What was your favorite
Yeah,
romance
my
from the
on-set
70s?
my on-set office romance is with a production designer by the name of Perry Blake. He's my office wife.
Perry Blake, we were lucky enough to have Perry Blake do a little class.
Yeah, I've been working with Perry for 25 years, and Jackie loves him, my wife. And so he's like because you start a movie with a location person and you start a movie with a production designer. And that way you take the script, you break it down, you're able to see where your iconic sets need to take place, and then you have to make decisions about whether you're going to build a set or just use a practical location to represent the set. Is it day? Is it night? Is it interior? Is it exterior? And does it require any effects like snow or rain, or do we need to have a digital background on some of our scenes? So the production designer is invaluable at the very beginning to start drawing and start. The director can start storyboarding with the production designer, so you kind of can look at keyframe art. You could also take the thumbnail storyboards and create some illustrations that we call keyframe that can give you a real artistic look at what the scene is going to be like, right? So then you can start formulating all the artwork, you start formulating all the locations, and you can start making choices about what the problems are at a practical location in terms of controlling traffic and civilian people and the lighting and the sun crossing the sky, or putting it on a stage where you can control the lighting and you control, you're packaged in a stage and you have complete control. But sometimes you really want the outside location because you really want that feeling of not being completely in control, where it's like the Eiffel Tower. So we really wanted to be on the Eiffel Tower and marry it with scenes that we couldn't possibly do on the Eiffel Tower, right? And so we had to build the base of the Eiffel Tower on a stage and then marry it up. So when we were on the stage, we had these blue screens and green screens behind us. And then when we were on the real Eiffel Tower, we shot what's called plates, which are background, which photography for the backgrounds. And then we just composite it together. So, but you have to make those choices. What are the tipping points between building a set and staying on a location? And those have to be decided by the director of photography, the director, a visual effects person if they're involved, and the production designer. There's Perry Blake and Barry Bernardi. And there we are.
There we are. I just pulled this picture up. I found this today. This is producing here, right? We were at the opera in Paris, and there's Boyan and Perry Blake. So these were just thumbnail storyboards that we did from shooting there. I'm going to stop that. I'm going to stop that share right now. I was going to pull up the Eiffel Tower pictures, but it looks like we have a question, Barry.
So like when you're a producer on such a huge production, it can be hard to kind of like conceptualize what a day-to-day, like a day's work looks like in that position. Would you say that it's more like shepherding and delegating, or are you more like hands-on in influencing the look and the vision of the movie?
So the more money you have, the easier it is. The only thing that's more difficult, and I'll get to that in a second, when you have a lot of money, you have so many people helping you, and you've already figured out what the day's work is or the night's work is. And so you're prepared with the first assistant director, the director of photography, and the director. You've been over it a million times. You've visited the set. So you know that the first AD has done a timeline. So by lunch, we should have gotten this much work. And then we're looking, okay, after lunch, we'll turn around and light in a different direction and finish the coverage on the scene that we were attempting to do that day, right? So that's how the harder, the less money you have, the harder it is, because you're really trying to stretch a buck and you're trying to be creative in terms of getting your vision on the screen. When you have a big picture, the only thing that really can harm the day's work is not something that is substantive. It's mostly emotional. So when you're working together as young people on independent movies, there's very little emotional problems because you're all excited and ready to go. But when you're on a big picture with big movie stars who have conditions about this and that, and maybe they've got zits or they've got something that's going on that prohibits them coming out of the makeup or hair trailer, or something's happened where the scene during rehearsal is not reading right, and then it becomes an emotional issue, you know, because everybody's been exposed to the material and the schedule. Everybody knows what's in front of them. It's not a surprise. It's like going to your favorite pizza place and getting the slice that you always love. And that's how you're prepared for the shoot. But sometimes, I don't know, the guy, you know, we burned the pizza. And so the talent won't come out of the makeup and hair trailer, or the director throws a fit, not Jeremy, or somebody on the crew, or there's some sort of battle emotionally, but not substantively, because we've prepared professionally how to tackle the day and how to make the day, and so that we could all watch it and be happy.
That's a great answer, Ray. I think we see Julia. What's your question, Julia?
Hi, thank you for coming
Hi.
there. First of all, my question is mainly about the pitching process, and like I'm also a writer, so I was wondering if you had advice or specific things that you know as a producer when being asked to produce something that you would say impacts the outcome when you're making decisions, and things that maybe we could be thinking about as we enter the industry, and maybe that's something we're doing.
Right. Sometimes pitching works, depending on who you're pitching to. Sometimes they like the oral tradition of hearing the idea rather than seeing it in a finished script or a treatment or some sort of synopsis of what you're trying to sell. You're basically selling with a pitch. So you want to make sure that you're either partnered with a director who or an actor or an actress that you're pitching the idea with, that could give excitement to a person who's buying, the buyers, so they can imagine that casting or that director in that idea that you're pitching, right? So it takes time for you to develop even a pitch, because presentation is everything in terms of how you're approaching the buyer. So the buyer wants to know, well, why should I make this? Why should I buy this script? The only reason I would buy this idea is if it can attract an actor or a director that wants to make this idea, so that I can sell it to my partners and we can spend money on it and it can get money back for us, right? So unless you're getting a loan from the state of New York or a film commission, you know, from some other source, but if you're going the traditional way into the movie business, you want to be able to set yourself up for success, or try to, because even writers who are successful at their points in their career still have a tough time selling, because sometimes for whatever reason, there's a like project or a like idea out there that's being solicited, and the timing may be wrong. It has nothing to do with the story. There's a weird determinism that people can run into, where there's like a bunch of stories, the same type of stories, all being pitched at the same time and the same idea. And it's really weird. That happened during when Big was made with Tom Hanks. There was also Freaky. I don't know. There was a bunch of switch stories, switch body stories that came out at the same time. So, having said that, you have to probably be around and try to get a job as a writer's assistant, or be around a project that has writers on it or directors, and run those ideas by people in the business who you're working with, who you trust, that are not going to steal your idea, and then, or you can register it before. And that way you have sounding boards from a person who is already established, right? Because you're working as their assistant or as their script coordinator, or you're working for an actor or an actress. And hey, I have an idea, and let's flesh it out. Let's flesh that out. That might be great for me. Because you want to direct your ideas, hopefully, to people you come into contact with. Unless you have an original idea like Star Wars or something like that, that's more centered around that kind of a story, as opposed to a performance piece, right? So that's how I would go about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How about, is it Michaela? Is that how we pronounce it?
Yeah, it's Michaela.
Hi, Michaela.
Hi, it's very nice to meet you, and I've been very excited about this. So my question is, if you've ever been on a set where someone has kind of stepped on your toes position-wise. I'm kind of going through that right now, where I was given a role. Well, we voted on it, and I was given a role, and one of the other crewmates are kind of taking over my position because they think that just because they wrote it, they can, kind of thing. Like, I'm directing it, and like, I understand the role, the fact that we're given roles or we choose our roles, and it's not fair to step on other people's toes in the process. I'm wondering if you've ever been in a situation like that.
There is that.
Like the emotional.
Yeah, an emotional problem, what you've just described, which is really, something that has to be, you don't want to, you never want to punch down at somebody. You always want to try to respect everybody's space and job that they're doing. So I think it's something that's not fair to you, that you need to take this person aside quietly and say, look, you made me the director, and that's what I want to do, and I feel confident in doing it. But if you want to do it, if you need to do this and wear all three hats, or if that's what you want to do, I'll step aside and do something else. I don't think you should let it fester at all. I think you have to talk to this person head on.
This is a really great example, Michaela, of where a producer comes in, because this is something where, there's an emotional issue there, and there's kind of people, there's clearly an issue, and somebody like Barry, who knows how to deal with people and really knows how to kind of, he's a life coach, he's a psychiatrist, he listens. So like, this is where like a real producer would come in super handy. But that's a great question. I'm sorry you're going through that.
Yeah.
Well, it is a learning experience, because throughout your entire career, if you're lucky to have and you will be, like, have a successful career working with people, like, you're going to be working with people that you're not going to always get along with all the time, and you're going to have to, I don't like to call it compromise. I like to call it collaborate, where it's just like, you try. Compromise feels like you're losing something, and collaborate is like you're going to find something that's not exactly what you wanted to do, but it might end up being better, like at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, we're doing art, and it's,
Yeah.
either red or it's blue, and it's not that one's better to the other. It's just one, you like blue and this person likes red. So,
What you're saying, Jeremy, is absolutely right. You have to collaborate. If the positions were agreed upon before the beginning of photography, then that should be the deal. But if again, a strong producer would have sorted that out and helped you out and helped all the parties out at that point. I think that it's a situation where you have to resolve it between the two of you, and figure that out, what's best going forward for the project. And also, if they hired you, they must like what you pitched. That's a pitch to being a director and what your vision of the project was. When we hire directors as producers, studio and producers listen to the director's pitch on the material. So when you have a script that people want to make because Jennifer Aniston's in it or whoever's in it, then you want a director who's pitching their vision of how the movie should be laid out, is very important. And so if you went through that with this writer and said, Dad, this is how I plan on shot listing the movie, and this is what's important, and you're a great script, the relationship between these two characters, whatever it may be in your script, and that's what I'm going to bring. That's what I'm going to talk about. And I really believe in, and by the way, I believe directors should also study camera, so that you can have a conversation with the writer or with the actors about, well, I want to do long lenses, I want to do wide lenses. This is how I imagine the coverage. I see it more wide than close. And those are all the creative decisions that you want to settle before you start shooting. All right.
Thank you, Barry. That's an amazing answer. It looks like we've got Gabrielle. Is that how we're pronouncing it?
Yeah. Hi Barry. Thank
Hi.
you for talking to us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I'm someone who also likes producing. I also go to DePaul. And I work on
Can you
like
solve the problem in the can you solve the other problem, Michaela's problem?
Michaela's problem.
Yeah.
Oh, honestly, I would talk to your department. So I would talk to why you're butting heads in the first place, in my opinion, and then see where people kind of align more. If say like a story fits your idea more, that's just kind of consensus. If the story fits the other person's idea more, that's kind of consensus. But I would talk and see if you can compromise between you two first, and then kind of resolve and say, hey, what does everybody else think? It's kind of my
That's a
thought
great
process. I've kind of had a similar situation where like my director and DP were butting heads, and that's kind of what I did. But my kind of question is, so I tend to produce kind of like films that are like 10 to 20 minute long short films, and
Right.
then it's like I'll finish that, and then the next week I'll have like same kind of deal. And I feel like it gets kind of stressful working on multiple projects kind of simultaneously. I was kind of wondering where you find that balance, or if that improves in the future. I know you work on like bigger feature films, so if you do films like simultaneously kind of working on that, or if you have any like don't do that in the future type advice.
I'll just jump in before you even get to this, Barry, because when we were shooting Murder Mystery, we had a crew in Hawaii, we had a crew in Paris at the same exact time. Barry was shooting Hustle in Philadelphia. He was also shooting a movie called Outlaws. And so I think you were in post on an animated movie. I think you had 4 movies in production at the same exact time. So it doesn't get easier. I'll just put it that way.
It's not easier, but you have to have key people in each project that you trust that can communicate to you you know, what's going on a daily basis. And you have to have bandwidth. You have to appreciate the bandwidth and look at it as welcoming as, you know, and try to, I mean, I'm not saying I didn't get stressed at times with the travel and no sleep. And, you know, it's definitely can be anxiety driven when you're doing multiple projects because you're trying to balance it. But I'm not really a computer person. I do everything on my note cards, which are called buck slips, and Jeremy's aware of this. So each buck slip that I have is my to-do list each day on each project. And then I have a little buck slip for my personal life as well. You could ask my wife about that one. And then, you know, that keeps me together. And it is common sense. I mean, really, when you look at the milestones that you need to achieve by a certain date to be ready to shoot, you can reverse engineer that back to the starting gate on each project. And it's like I have an innate antenna that tells me, oh, today I have to make the decision on this in order to move forward on that so that we're ready on such and such a date. So, but you only learn that through empirical producing. You can't learn that in a film school. I mean, you can learn the different crafts, you can learn film history, which I recommend for everybody, that if you find directors or films that you feel you haven't seen, I recommend you seeing great movies so you can really see how elevated the art form can be. But on a day-to-day basis that you're dealing with, you really want to make sure you have some people that you can reach out and touch to be a partner, right? You need partners. And I've always said, I don't care who the author is of my success. It can be anybody else. I don't have to be the author of the success. I just have to make sure I put all the pieces in place. And that's the way you would approach it. You would just approach it like you're making a giant quilt. And you don't start in the middle. So I think you just have to, if that's what you want to do, back-to-back stuff like that on short projects, then you need somebody to work with. If you want to get out of that and work on long form projects, then you should try to meet people who are in that particular side of it so that you can join that group, and they could see how great you are and then put you in positions. You know, you may start out as a post-production supervisor, you may start out as a associate producer or production supervisor, and then find your way into a union. I recommend any producing that are practical producers or actual producers, like line producers, that you join the Directors Guild of America, because that gives you a lifeline that you will cherish for the rest of your life. If you're a writer, you want to get into the Writers Guild. And if you're an actor, you want to get into SAG. And if you want to stay in the crafts like gaffing, gripping, director of photography, you want to join the IA. And you want to be protected by unions so that unscrupulous people will not take advantage of you.
Well, speaking of not taking advantage of people, I don't want you to, you've already given us enough of your time and enough of your genius and experience, Barry. It is 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and I want to thank you profusely for this. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure everybody else learned a lot. And we really appreciate it, Barry.